question. What is educational justice?
I think that educational justice is the ability for everybody to get an education. It's the ability for everybody to get the same education and have the same access.
Okay. Educational justice is when anybody can receive an education, no matter of your race, religion, or upbringing, or financial status.
This is that every student is receiving the same education, regardless of how much money their family have or where they live.
I think educational justice is the right and equality for all students to have the same opportunities and resources given to them by a superior or somebody on a higher level. So that's what I think.
I think educational justice is education that's justified on all levels, no matter your ethnicity, your earning potential, or any other like disabilities. I think all across the board it should be a way to help you learn without any other stipulations attached to it.
I believe educational justice is everyone getting the same opportunities. When we look at different schools across the district, or across the state, country, whatever, we notice that it's a lot of variation in the type of education that they get, the resources that they have, the teachers, extracurricular activities, everything. So to me, educational justice will be every student getting the same opportunity to be successful.
Educational justice is where different schools teach different ways, and some schools have more than what other schools do, and it should be equal all the way across the board.
Based on the responses, educational justice to them is to have an equal educational opportunity, no matter where you come from or what your race is, what religion you practice, and it should be the same for each student across the board. But a transition. How does the environment you are in affect the learning process that gives a type of educational justice? These are what some of the people had to say.
The environment you're in has a huge impact on the learning that takes place within the school. If you have smaller class sizes, if you have more resources, more technology, you're going to learn and thrive better. If you are in a small classroom that's 90 degrees, it's going to affect how much you're able to learn.
I do believe that the environment you're in affects the learning process. Being around a certain type of person.
When it comes to environments, it has a big role to play on education. A student in a bad environment surrounded by a seedy area with loud kids, they're not going to be able to receive the same opportunity as, say, a student in Birmingham who is around resources and who has teachers that's willing to go the extra mile for their student in that setting. So environment has a big role to play.
I think it plays a big role in the learning process. You have students from urban areas and you have students from more suburban areas who get different opportunities based on where they live. You can take a kid from 7 Mile who goes to the DPS and he doesn't have as much of an opportunity as a kid from Clinton Township who has ample opportunity because he's in a more sufficient area.
The environment that you're in really impacts your learning. Basically, if you're in a hostile environment, there's going to be less learning going on because there's so many fires that have to be put out during this time. And if you're in a good environment, basically the learning is going to be easier for you to do.
Yes, I do. Yes, I really do. Students who are in areas where it's not as much money, poverty, they don't get as many opportunities. I look at schools here versus schools that are out in Wayne and Westland, and each student has their own iPad. Their extracurricular activities go into lacrosse and everything else, whereas here I only see football, basketball, not speaking Oak Park specifically, but in schools around here, I'm only seeing cheerleading, football, basketball, and volleyball in some places, whereas in other schools they do things like lacrosse, they do golf, they do tennis, they're swimming, and that's stuff that I'm not really seeing as much here in Detroit area, Metro Detroit area.
I actually have been in a lot of different environments, and my grades have been tremendously great and awful based on that environment. So environment plays a huge factor in education and the learning process.
There isn't just one right answer on how the environment impacts the learning process. According to the responses, it all has something to do with the resources provided, the students you are surrounded by, and as well as a wage/resource gap that needs to be bridged in between urban compared to suburban schools. But here's another transition. Do you think that there is a wage gap that has something to do with resources provided to the students compared with urban to suburban schools?
Oh yeah, there's compared to this school to compared to where I live, the kids up there have a lot more opportunities than the kids here at Oak Park. So basically, there's a lot of that stuff that's going on.
Once again, like I said, that all ties into money. The more money you have, the more things that you can afford, unless you are getting some type of grant, scholarship, something for the resources that
I
you
think there's
need.
a huge gap between urban and suburban schools, whether it is the basic resources that the students do not receive in urban schools that suburban schools do, or just the classroom environment having technology, or even the fact that teachers get paid less in urban schools than suburban schools.
I think it's a big resource gap. I think, lower income schools have less things to offer than upper income schools. It's a big difference between a school like Clintondale and a school like Mumford. It's a big pay difference. So depending on which school someone might go to, they will get the resources that they have at that school. But every school is not the same. It's all.
It's a huge gap. Like it's so blatant that they obviously came out with I think it was a bill that said that it's okay for education to be at a different level depending on where you're at in the state, which is kind of sad, but it's the reality of life at the moment.
Yep. Yes. Urban schools, generally speaking, we are financially stunted. We're not given the same opportunities because we don't have the same amount of money as suburban schools. Whereas suburban schools, they have more money and they're able to get more resources. Whereas, urban African American schools aren't.
Obviously, there is a gap that needs to be bridged with educational resources based on the location or the environment you are in. According to the per pupil allowance, even the amount the school gets for each student is different. For a school like Oak Park, Henry Ford, or other schools in Metro Detroit, we get about $7,000 to $8,000 for each student. But then when you go upstate to a place like Birmingham, where the schools are like way more advanced, you can see why, because they get about $11,000 to $12,000 for each student. There is no doubt that inequality and inequity is shown with Oak Park High School compared to Seaholm High School regarding educational resources in their environment. And with these next videos, you will see a small direct comparison of the two schools, and I want you to think, is this a depiction of inequality and inequity? And does it show a type of systemic racism because of the low funding and the different types of technology that are involved with the schools? But first, a few words from Keyshawn and Emmanuel.
In America, we have accepted that public education is critical to the very foundation of our country.
One of the topics that is always considered when we discuss public education is equity. Are all schools provided with the same resources, quality of teaching, faculties, and parental support?
Start it over. I wasn't ready.
I'm gonna crop my voice out.
Oh, okay.
You can go first.
You're not in an environment affects. Yeah, I messed up.
I never heard that term before.
I do believe. What the?
It's not that hard. It's not that hard.
That's it.
Ooh, rolling your eyes.
Yes. Mess my video up.
Okay.
In between, Oh, Dad, he was screaming, it's almost roar.